Okay. Part two. Part two is much less involved. We're going to create some crown molding just so that we can practice the follow me tool. Crown molding is kind of, the fancy trim that you sometimes see at the top of your walls. So I just got kind of a pretty simple profile here that we can draw, and then we'll use the follow me tool to put it all around our tiny house. Okay, so kind of just like we did with the cabinet profile, let's go ahead and do the same thing. We'll find a blank wall where we can get this started. Go ahead and unhide my roof. Show my hidden geometry, hidden objects again. I just want to unhide that floor that I did so that I can see a good starting point for my crown molding. So I want it to be at the top of the wall, right along the ceiling. So I'll go ahead and start right here. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to start here at this edge, just so that I can show you guys kind of wrapping how the follow me tool will wrap around the corner. If I started back here and started going this way, there's no corner for me to wrap around, so that wouldn't be a very helpful tutorial. So I'll go ahead and start here. And we're just going to draw this profile. And this corner up here, this top left, bless you, that's where you're going to intersect the wall with the ceiling. So 2 inches across, 2 inches down, ½ inch on each here, and then we'll use the 2-point arc tool to create this 1½ inch arc. All right, go ahead and get started with my line tool. I'm going to find this corner here where my wall meets my ceiling. I'm moving it 2 inches across, 1½ inches down. Make sure you're on that blue axis and not accidentally drawing a line at some weird angle. We'll do ½ inch down. And then I'll go ahead and go back to my starting point and create that 2 inches down. And then 1½ inches. The red that I want is outward, that ½ inch. And now I'll grab the 2-point arc tool. Should be up in your no, not quite there. Oh, it's in the draw. If you don't have it already in your toolbox, you can go to Draw, Arcs, and 2-point arc, or just hit A on your keyboard. All right, for the 2-point arc, it wants you to specify each point of the arc, and then you'll be able to pull the bulge or the radius of it. So we'll grab each of our endpoints here, where we left off on each side. So we'll grab the first one, bring it across to the second one, and then we start to pull inward. Have a funny angle here. Make sure that we're on the right angle that we want it. And you're having a hard time finding, kind of pulling it in the direction that you want. You should be able to pull along this line if you're just kind of hovering your cursor along the line. Or if you find it helpful, you can go ahead and close off this surface here to actually give yourself a surface. You can close that off, and then that might just kind of help you make sure that you're modeling along that correct surface. It's a little bit easier to make sure you're going at the right angle that way. But whenever you get your right angle going, you just type 1.5, enter. Oops, that's way too big. Why'd that happen? Again. Here it goes. Inward here. What in the world? I must be at the wrong angle or something. SketchUp doesn't always like me.
I don't like SketchUp.
Well, an inch and a half isn't super important. I can't get it. Point is, you want to mulch. And then you did create that surface there. Go ahead and erase those extra lines so that you're left with just the molding profile. Alright, and then, so the follow me is similar to push-pull in that it extrudes surfaces. But with the push-pull tool, you can only push-pull in one direction, and it has to be perpendicular to the surface. So if I start pushing and pulling, it's going to have to stop at this corner. So then what I would have to do is, copy this and rotate it around to move it over to this wall. That's where the follow me tool is going to be more helpful. So the follow me tool looks like this guy. It's brown and red. Have an arrow almost in a circular pattern. You should be able to find it in the tools up here again. Follow me. Two ways to use the follow me tool. The first is that you're just kind of manually dragging it across a path. So with the follow me tool activated, you can click and drag your surface. Why don't you like it? I wonder if it's having problems because it can't detect a path, because everything is in a group. So we might have to draw ourselves a little path here first. Let me see if that's the issue. Yep, that looks like it's the issue. Okay. So if you have everything in a group, then follow me is not going to be able to find a path to extrude itself along. So you might have to go ahead and draw yourself some lines along the path that you want it to extrude. I'm going to go ahead and just draw some lines here along the edges of my ceiling. Okay, so I guess that's kind of step number one. You have to have a path in order for follow me to work. So then the first way, you grab follow me, and then you just click and drag that profile along the path that you want it to take. Then once you hit that corner, you can start to still keep dragging along that next one, that next line that you have. And then once you reach your end point, you just release. And you'll see that that created my extrusion along that corner here. The other way to do it is you would first select the path. So just with your select tool, grab those lines that you want the profile to take the path of, and then go ahead and select follow me, and then just click on the profile, the surface, and it'll automatically push itself along that path. Same result either way. What you might find helpful is maybe to, keep a copy of just this profile so that you can start to copy that profile around to the different areas of your house rather than, modeling it each and every time. I would also highly encourage you to keep it in a group because we like to have everything in a group so that everything remains isolated on its own. So maybe you made a group before you started to use the Follow Me tool. You can create a group later on. You just might sometimes have some trouble picking and choosing what you want to be in the group. If you've been using groups the whole time, it should be fairly easy. You should just be able to triple click and it'll grab everything, but it won't grab your groups. And then maybe you want to, if you want to create a new tag for your crown molding, that's probably a great idea. And then move that group to the crown molding tag. The thing to note here, now that I've made my profile inside of a group, it again is not going to be able to detect a path because the lines that I created are now outside of the group. So your profile and the path need to be kind of in the same geometry space. So let's just go ahead and look at it again. I've got my path created. The first way, I had the Follow Me tool selected, and I could click and drag across my paths and release when I'm finished. The second way was with your Select tool to select the path that you want it to take. Grab Follow Me and click on that surface. You should be able to do this, as many directions as you want. Let's just go ahead and look at it out here. Maybe I want it to go on some crazy maze type of path here. I'll just go ahead and draw a simple rectangle to make things easier. So same thing, I can grab the Follow Me tool, click and drag this around each of my curves, each of my lines, and it just keeps on going. And then release when I'm done. Or select all the lines, grab Follow Me, and click on that. And then we saw this even with our very first assignment. Follow Me should work even on curves here. Sometimes it's a little bit funny to start on a curve, so maybe just make a straight line to get it started. Oops, not like that. Should be able to go along any path, even this wonky S that I just drew. Any problems with Follow Me? Okay. A couple things about Follow Me tool. Just like with the push-pull tool, how we saw if you are adjacent to another surface, let's first look at just push-pull. If I extrude this surface upward, you might find that your original surface disappears. That happens whenever your original surface is kind of touching something else. The reason for that is that it's basically just moving that surface upward and then creating that extrusion behind it. And then the workaround that we saw for that, to make sure that we keep that original surface in place, was we clicked Control while we're using it, and that essentially copies the surface, leaving the extrusion in place rather than just moving it. So now if I went ahead and did the same thing, that surface should still be there. So follow me will work the same way. So if you're noticing whenever you used follow me, let's see if I can quickly set something up for us here. If I want to follow me with just this part of the surface, pull that along. You might notice if this surface disappeared, the workaround for that is just to click Control and make sure that that surface still stays. Or, if this does get hollowed out for some reason, we've learned that we can also just, draw over a line to retell SketchUp that yes, this is a closed loop, make a surface. Okay, and then a couple other things that the textbook brings up. You might find them helpful as you're working through this assignment. Otherwise, they're just maybe some good things to know. There is something called the intersect tool. So you can kind of force an intersection even if two pieces of geometry aren't quite lining up. So let's take a look here. There. Okay, so if I push pull this guy through here, you can see that it didn't create any lines here. So this is actually still one complete surface because there are no actual edges here that are telling this surface that there's something intersecting it. So you can use the intersect tool to work around that because maybe you did want to create a separate surface in here. You wanted to see those lines, those hard edges. Either piece of geometry, you can just right click and hit intersect faces with model. And now you can see I've actually got those lines that showed up here. So anytime you have geometry that is intersecting, but it didn't quite create those edges for you, you can just right click intersect faces and it'll create those lines for you. So you can actually see where that intersection is taking place. Another thing that the textbook brings up, which we've talked a bit about before, but it goes a little bit more in depth here. And that's how every surface has a front face and a back face. So we should be familiar with that concept at this point. The front face is typically going to be white, and the back face usually shows up as this bluish gray. The front face might also be called the normal. You might hear it called that. Sometimes the textbook refers to it as the normal. So, and we already know that we can kind of reverse them. Let's say we want the front face to be on this side instead. We know that we can right click and reverse faces, and that'll flip it so that the back side and the front side flip. For our purposes, it doesn't really matter since we're not doing, this is just for our own knowledge, but in professional practice, you might want to get into the habit of making sure that your normal is always kind of the side facing out. And that's because there are certain programs, different plugins that can only register the front face of a surface. So it just kind of ignores the back face. So if you've done a bunch of, if your material is on the back face, certain plugins might not be able to register that because it can only sense the front face. We're not using any plugins. We're not sending our models off to somebody to, render off of, or even exporting. Sometimes if you export to like a CAD file, a DWG, that'll only read the normal side. So it's just good practice to keep the normal, the front face facing out. It'll probably be more useful for you as you get into more professional practice. But just to note that, what you might find though is that sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to recognize which is the front face and which is the back face. Maybe it's because you have textures applied, so you can't see which side is white versus which side is the blue. So let's just say, for example, if I put some color on this side, well, now I have no idea if that's white or blue. So there are two kind of tricks that we can do here to help us. So if you do have some textures applied, let me go ahead and do a different texture back here. You can set your model to the face style to just be monochrome so that your textures are still there, but you're viewing the model back in just that black or that white and blue style. So even though I have textures applied here, I can go up to View, Face Style, and I can change it to monochrome, and that'll get me back to just my white and blue sides. Those textures are still there, so if I go back up to my face style, I can I can put it back to shaded with textures, and those materials are still going to be there. But if you ever find yourself wanting to just look at your model in a cleaner view, you can always go up to View, Face Style, and switch it to monochrome. Another thing you can do, maybe the white and the blue are just too similar for you sometimes. Even whenever you move around and these shadow effects start to occur, that could be bluish gray to me just because I'm looking at it at an angle. So you can actually change the colors of the front face and the back face, their default colors. You can change them from white and blue to be whatever you want. Similar to how we've done with our edge style settings so far. We made our edges all different colors. You can do the same thing with your faces. So if you go over to your styles panel that's over here in your default tray and hit the edit tab, and then choose this second icon that says face settings, you'll see there's a front color and a back color. That's where that white and blue is coming from. So you can click each of these and you can, with the color picker drop down, you can do RGB or maybe just a color wheel. And you can change that to a different color. So maybe I want my front color to be red. Hit OK. That automatically changed the front color or the front face of all of my surfaces to be red. And then if I click on my back color here, maybe I'll change it to green. It's going to be Christmas. That'll change all of my back faces to green. And now I've got no trouble recognizing the difference between red and green. So those might be helpful for you. And then the last thing the textbook touches on for this chapter is the outliner. you. The outliner is an organizational tool that allows you to view all of the groups and components in your model in a hierarchical order. So you know how we have nested groups and components? The outliner will show you kind of what the main group is and then what each of the different groups or components are inside of it. So to find the outliner, okay, close up some of these things. You'll go up to Window, and then you actually have to add it to your default tray. So you can hover over default tray and then click on Outliner, very last one, and that should start to appear in your default tray over here. And then if you take a look, this is showing me all of the groups and components that are in my model, and it's showing me what is nested inside of each other. So you can click this little details icon and you can expand all of them. So that way you can see every single one. And what this shows, if it is kind of these 4 little squares together, that means that this entry is a component. And so that makes sense. Our base cabinet, we made it as a component. And you can see whenever I clicked on that, it highlighted that component in my model. It shows me where that is. If it looks like just a solid black square, then that means it's a group. And same thing, I can click on it, and it actually goes into that group. Can't see it well right now because I've got my sections on. But, you know, wherever it is, there it is, it's inside this door. It starts to isolate where that group or component is. So you can just click around on different things and the model will, you know, adjust for you to show you where those groups or components are in your model. In here you can rename any of your groups or components. You can hide different groups. This red and green is kind of what we have now. Not hard to look at stuff. Let me turn my section back on. Just look at these cabinets here. So let's say I've got my base cabinet here. If you right click on the name of it, you have all of your same options that you have if I were to just be selecting the component and right clicking. So I can hide it just from here in the outliner, and you'll see that it kind of grayed it out. That lets me know that it's hidden. Right click it again and unhide it. Also, if you right click, you know, lots of options that you have here. You can come in here and rename it if you want to choose to rename any of your groups or components. And you can also search for certain components in here. If there's a group that you know is in here and you just can't find it, you can use this filter bar. It's basically like a search bar. If I just type in base, then it's going to show me everything that has base in the name of it. And so another important thing to mention here, you might notice that some of these things have kind of those bracket type of things around the name, and then some of them are just, you know, plain. They don't have any brackets. The difference here is the definition name versus the instance name. So a definition name, let's use a component for example. The definition name is the name that we give our components when we create it. Whenever we right click and hit make component, and it asks us to give it a name, we're giving it the definition name. And you can also see it in your entity info. There's that definition, the base cabinet. That's the name that we gave it. So whenever it's the definition name, that's when you're seeing those brackets around it, or whatever you call those things. I don't know what they're called. So that lets you know it's the definition name. If it has nothing around it, that's the instance name. So both components and groups have instance names, and instance just means each copy of it. But only components have a definition name. So if you wanted to, you could find this group. So it looks like this group here is my interior walls groups. I just selected it and it's showing me what it is. You can actually give groups an instance name. So if I came in here, I could just call it interior walls. And now that group, where did it go? I'm going to search for it. Interior, there we go. Now that group is called interior walls. So that may or may not be helpful for you. It really just depends on, how elaborate your model is going to be, how well organized you can be with it. I'm definitely not saying you should go in and give every single group and component its own instance name. I don't know that you'll find that helpful for your modeling here. But just know that this exists so that it's just another layer of organization that you can have to your SketchUp model. It'll help you easily be able to find different groups and components that you're looking for. So just consider the level of organization you need for your projects and give those instance names as necessary. Use the outliner tool if you find it helpful for you.